Andrew, I'm going to put you on the spot. In your long, illustrious career, have you ever been to a Liberal Democrat conference?
Very, very many times. And even, I'm so old, to Liberal conferences, with the organic apple stalls and the land tax valuation stalls and the unsettling lack of socks. I've seen it all.
Yes, lots of sandals.
Lots of sandals, lots of ponytails, lots of grizzled men glaring at you from their fastnesses in the Peak District, all of that.
Rachel, Lib Dem conference, generally known to be one of the more positive ones. But this time they did actually have something to celebrate. 72 MPs, third largest party in Parliament. What was the atmosphere like?
It had a real victory lap / summer holiday vibe. So obviously it helps if you're going to do a seaside conference, if you've got beautiful weather. It also helps if you are coming off the back of your best ever election result. We had a lot of 72 MPs. There were posters up in the exhibition hall saying the most Lib Dem MPs ever, most as in the highest number, not the most Liberal Democrat of the cohort, if that makes sense. But the Liberal Democrats are kind of known for having a conference that's a bit more fun and a bit more playful anyway. This is my first time going, but this one was way bigger than it normally is. And it's an interesting vibe for a conference because usually if a party has just had an amazing election result, then they're celebrating, sure, but they've also got to do the serious bit of, OK, what are we going to do in government? Mm-hmm. And they didn't have any of that responsibility. So they were just going around saying, isn't it wonderful? You're wonderful. No, you're wonderful. And that was kind of the sense.
Andrew, I'm going to put you on the spot. In your long, illustrious career, have you ever been to a Liberal Democrat conference?
Very, very many times. And even, I'm so old, to Liberal conferences, with the organic apple stalls and the land tax valuation stalls and the unsettling lack of socks. I've seen it all.
Yes, lots of sandals.
Lots of sandals, lots of ponytails, lots of grizzled men glaring at you from their fastnesses in the Peak District, all of that. No, I think what Rachel says points to the real danger for the Liberal Democrats, which is that those 72 are like a kind of great herd of gentle, herbivorous and completely pointless animals kind of grazing across rambling across the centre ground of British politics to no real purpose.
That was one of the themes, I guess, of the conference was
purposeless.
What is the purpose?
Exactly.
Well, they want to be taken seriously, don't they? I mean, I think that's somewhat undermined by arriving at your own conference as party leader on a jet ski. But you did sit down with Ed Davey.
I did. He wasn't on a jet ski when I spoke to him.
I'm imagining you on the back, life vest.
Well, another journalist got to go on a roller coaster with him. I didn't get that opportunity.
Well,
major fail, Rachel. You should have been in the wetsuit. You should have been in the slightly dirty water out there. Come on.
Next time.
Swimming in the poo. Now, that conversation is available on newstatesman.com, but I just want to play this clip where he told you, contrary to criticism here from Mr. Marr, about his ambitions to become the party of opposition.
I'd say it's about being the better opposition than the Conservatives. There's two reasons for that. First of all, I think we can win more Conservative seats. And I think to do that, we need to show to people that we are a better opposition. That means going on areas that the Conservatives have no credibility on, like NHS and care, like sewage. The issues we campaigned on, we want to continue campaign on. And I think we have credibility on those, and Conservatives never will. And we've got credible alternatives. We've thought through these issues really carefully. And I would argue that we've got a positive contribution to make. So it's not opposition for opposition's sake, because I don't think that is good opposition, actually.
Andrew, it's not opposition for opposition's sake.
I'm a very affable cove, and I'm going to lean over backwards to be fair. He's absolutely right to focus on social care and the pollution of waterways and so forth, two big Liberal Democrat issues. Because there are 72 MPs, presumably all talking about them all the time, that will raise them up the national agenda and we will talk about them more. I am unsettled when I hear a party leader saying that his highest ambition is to get more Conservative seats. That's not what politics is about. It's about what you do when you get them and afterwards. And, I was disappointed by his speech, but I thought there was one aspect that's really interesting. There is an importance to the Liberal Democrats, because if he decides that he is going to go for the Tories and be an anti-Tory party, standing, as it were, most of the time shoulder to shoulder with Keir Starmer, that makes life much easier for the Labour government. The effective majority is much, much bigger. And it also, I think, has an effect on the Tory party, because if the Liberal Democrats are really going for the rest of those Tory seats in the South East and South West, then I assume Tory members will think, we have to start to move a little bit more towards the centre-right ground to take them on. And therefore, perhaps the Tory party becomes less hard-right, as it were, which you might otherwise do to take on reform. So I think it has an effect on both sides. If, on the other hand, of course, he decides he is going to be the great opposition force against Labour and against Keir Starmer, he makes life for Keir Starmer much harder, because Keir Starmer finds he's fighting on two fronts, not just the Conservatives, but, as it were, a centre-left opponent.
So it has the potential to both help and hinder Labour, doesn't it?
Exactly. So I think, in a sort of soft way, they've got a kind of gravitational pull at the centre of British politics. And depending on the choices that Ed Davey makes, he can pull British politics and public life a little to the left or a little to the right.
Did you get the sense that this was a serious opposition in waiting, a proper serious opposition?
Well, the point of an opposition usually is to present themselves as the government in waiting. Ed Davey was asked about that by sort of me and other journalists, and didn't want to talk about that. Was very much like, we want to be the people we're competing with, other Conservatives, rather than Labour. Partly that's about arithmetic. So of the 72 MPs, of the new seats that they won, the vast majority of those were won from Conservatives. Of the 27 seats in which they came second, 20 of those are currently held by Conservatives. We got a lot of briefings on sort of the geography of the Lib Dem strategy, and it does make sense for them to target those seats next, because that's where they're doing the best. But I think it was interesting that he talked about Lib Dem values and the Conservatives being a threat to Lib Dem values, and trying to frame his real aggression towards the Conservatives in those terms, that it's not just about cynical numbers, it's also about what does the party stand for. I think it's also interesting that the Lib Dems have historically often been associated with a single issue. Under the Blair government, that was opposition to Iraq. Obviously, recently, it's been the EU, and they don't have to be a single issue party. Of course, they've got a full manifesto that they really wanted to talk about. But there was very much a sense from Ed Davey and from the conference as a whole that if they are going to be associated with one issue at the moment, they want that to be health and social care. That's what they want to use their political capital on.
Do either of you get the sense that their strategy is kind of targeting the wrong party? Because the Conservatives are not their major opposition politically.
The Conservatives, in terms of the direction of the country for the next few years, are irrelevant. And so, therefore, you're quite right. They should be focusing much more on Keir Starmer. Is he radical enough on the health service? Should he be doing more on taxation and making life a bit uncomfortable for him in that regard? But going back to what we were saying and Rachel's interview with him, it's pretty clear that he is still completely focused on the Conservatives. And therefore, the effect of this is going to be, we've talked on the New Statesman for years about there being a genuine sort of centre-left majority across the country, which somehow the Conservatives managed to swipe and take over from. Well, I think we're going to go through some years of the centre-left majority being real, and I think that is partly down to Ed Davey and the way he leads the Liberal Democrats. Though I did notice the Liberal Democrats, when asked if they wanted to go straight back into the EU, they all put their hands up. The membership is much more Europhile than the leadership is at the moment, and that's a potential tension for them.
And that was noticeable when it just came to the conference agenda, that the conference agenda, the official programme, mentioned health and social care and the NHS so many times, and did mention Europe, but in terms of, I think, wanting a youth mobility scheme and wanting an easier time for touring musicians, whereas the membership, you could still see there were a couple of EU flags, there were the EU berets that we've become accustomed to. So yeah, there definitely is a tension there, not necessarily in what the party believes, but the emphasis that the party wants to put forward.
We talked last time on the podcast, Rachel, about the different dynamic that you're seeing in Parliament now, particularly at Prime Minister's questions, with Ed Davey now getting to ask these 2 questions a week. And I thought it was really interesting that Ed Davey explained his strategy to you to use that to make the case for their priorities, especially healthcare.
So you will see me asking a lot of questions around health and care, but there'll be other questions, like I asked a question on winter fuel payments. And the strategy is to be the better opposition, by which I mean not doing Punch and Judy, yardie politics that Conservatives have already reverted to, but being constructive and having a different tone And if you've watched them, you'd see I've taken a different tone, even where I've been disagreeing with the government. Because I think tone matters if you're trying to win the debate.
Do you think this change in tone is he being realistic? Can it cut through?
I'm afraid whenever I hear a politician say, I think we'll do much better with a more grown-up tone in politics, I kind of inwardly cringe and think, you poor sap. Ed Davey means well. He's got one problem, is that he really likes Keir Starmer and Keir Starmer really likes him. Watching Sunak and Starmer across the dispatch boxes over the last few weeks, they really dislike each other. That's not the case with Ed Davey. So he's going to have to be careful not to be a bit Me Too. That's why I said right at the beginning, there's a danger of them sort of ambling across the centre ground of politics in a kind of miasma of genteel irrelevance. I was slightly disappointed in Ed Davey's speech that we didn't get more clear political direction from him, exactly what his target was. At times, he was thanking so many people that it sounded like one of those really bad wedding speeches where you realise after a while the groom is going to thank everybody, including the person who brought the Portaloos and the person who did the vol au vent, and forget to talk about the bride, you know? That's what it felt like to me.
I can understand why that might be your assessment of it. They were just having so much fun, though. I think, though, one of the real challenges for them, and it kind of comes out in the lack of policy in the speech, is people voted for them partly, I guess, because they wanted to oust their Conservative candidates. And on a local level, the Lib Dems often do quite well because if they can be a strong local MP, a strong local champion, people keep voting them in because constituents like that. But on a national level, there is this question, OK, what is the point of them? You've got the third largest cohort in Parliament. What are you going to use that to do? And there is a danger that people who voted for them because they wanted to see what kind of force can the Lib Dems be in Parliament with that kind of parliamentary cohort, after a couple of years go, yeah, what was the point? Now, they can't influence policy directly because they're not in government. It's not a coalition government. So the question is, how do they use that influence to get Labour to move in a direction, whether it's on health, whether it's on the EU or something else, that enables them to go back to the country in the next election and say, you voted for us, this is what we achieved. And that's quite difficult to do if you're the third party.